Is Obamacare wrecking this country's work ethic? Our next guest says by redistributing this new federal help to Americans, there is no longer a reward for working. Here with more, Casey Mulligan, a professor of economics at the University of Chicago and the author of The Redistribution Recession. Welcome to the show, Casey. It's great to have you here. So tell us what you mean that Obamacare is the second redistribution of wealth.
Well, and in the last 10 years, actually, there's another set of programs. They were called stimulus programs, not a good name, but they were called stimulus programs that pushed resources, gave resources and help to people who had low incomes, people without jobs, and that tended to make being without a job and make having a low income a little bit less painful than it normally is.
And we're doing that times two now, right?
Yeah, we're adding, a lot of those programs have not disappeared, and now we're adding to them about as much, times two is a good estimate, starting in January with a bunch of programs that are in the Obamacare package.
All right, you did some analysis on what's happening to marginal tax rates as a result of that. Talk about your findings, because this is interesting stuff. People are going to be paying more taxes and taking home less of what they make.
Right, well, there's a whole package there, and there's extra taxes on people. There are also benefits that are withheld when people work, especially if they work on a job with health insurance. There are benefits that are withheld as people's incomes rise. And the politician never calls that a tax, but it's an implicit tax. The more successful you are, the more we hold back. And then finally, there's a set of penalties on employers, saying employers, if you hire people, you retain them on your payroll, we're going to penalize you and make you pay a fine. So all that together looks like really what an economist would call a tax, which means there's more resources for people who don't work, more resources for people with low incomes, and less of a reward for pulling yourself out of those situations.
You know, in your op-ed that ran, I believe, today in the Wall Street Journal, you said something about a 50% marginal tax rate or index. And then, you know, once it's more than half your income, let me tell you, it's harder to get up in the morning. You know, it's hard to earn that extra dollar. Why are you earning that extra dollar if you're giving 50 cents of it to the government? Tell us about those findings.
Yeah, well, family situations are unique, and people live in different parts of the country, and so there's a lot of situations. But what I did is I looked at an average, and on average, before this first stimulus and before the new health care law, people kept about 60% and paid about 40% to the government in one way or another. With all these new programs, including Obamacare, by 2015, a little over a year from now, on average, it'll be up to 50% that people pay to the government when they work. And that's just an average. So there'll be people at 70, 80, 90, 100%, and then there'll be other people who are below that 50% number. But the main thing that's coming on is everyone's going to be giving up a little bit more to the government when they work.
Yeah, and I think it's really difficult for people to see, because there's no number, there's no metric. The government doesn't measure how disgruntled taxpayers are, right? There's no, GDP for taxpayers, right? So it's hard to measure how upset people are about it, but it does impact behavior. How do you think it impacts behavior?
Well, definitely it's going to lead to people doing more part-time work, employers asking their people to do more part-time work instead of full-time work. Unemployment spells will last longer. Time out of the labor force with children or what have you will last longer. There'll be some earlier retirements. It'll take longer, I think, for young people to make that transition from school to a serious attachment to a job. So you'll see it in a lot of dimensions, and the bottom line will be, a smaller economy, a weaker economy, and a smaller labor force.
All right, Casey, thanks for coming on. Interesting stuff, interesting study. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And tomorrow, we wrap up our user's guide to Obamacare by devoting the entire hour of the Willis Report to answering your questions. You can call us. We'll take your phone calls, your emails, tweet us, you name it. Get in touch with us. We'll have a panel of experts here, doctors, people who help write the bill to answer those questions. So be sure to join us tomorrow.